Okay, so yeah, I am, as you said, a technical evangelist from Hasura. And if you guys haven't heard of Hasura, essentially what we are is we're not quite a backend as a service, but what we allow you to do is basically uh, create your database tables. Like, let's say you have a post and you want to create, some columns on it, and it generates a full GraphQL CRUD API, and it allows you to hook up foreign keys and relations. And we have integration with external custom functions through just like actions, which are HTTP requests. So I thought that for this demo, it could be pretty cool if we kind of went through building a meetup, like a really, really, really crappy meetup clone. Um, and we're gonna do it real time because that's something else that Hasura gives you is that all of your database tables and your entire GraphQL API have live subscriptions. So I'm gonna cover the stack first. So the tech that we're using here is Hasura. I'm using Vue 2 with a composition API in TypeScript and Vue Apollo 4 also with the composition API. And then you can get a really good workflow if you use tools like GraphQL Code Generator, because you can no code generate your GraphQL API and then use that to generate your like client SDK. So it lends to this workflow where like you really don't have to do anything except kind of plug in the pieces on the front end. So we have two different types. On the back end, um, we're using GraphQL request, which just generates like a generic HTTP SDK. And then on the front end, we're using the Vue Apollo composition API generator. The back end for our custom logic is just like a Fastify API. And that just has two endpoints. It's a JWT off implementation. You can see it here. It's just got like a sign up and a login endpoint that just does a bcrypt and then a bcrypt compare and returns like a JWT. So this is like a really good example and probably one of the most common examples of ways that you'll like integrate external actions with Hasura, because it can do CRUD and statistics, but like everybody needs like authentication or sending a welcome email like when a user registers or handling Stripe payments. So all you really have to do is basically define your HTTP handler. So like here we have sign up, and then in Hasura you basically create an action, right? And you just have to define the inputs and the outputs for it and give it a URL. And then that will create a like a wrapping GraphQL method for it in its own graph. And we also have some things which are really cool. So we have these code generators, which allow you to generate basically like boilerplate endpoints from your custom logic definitions. We have a couple languages here. There's like 6 more that are going to get merged in soon. Yeah, so that's basically like the general overview of like what Hasura does. Um, I guess like the other pertinent thing is that the auth model is like really, really flexible. So basically our tables here, right, we modeled like a meetup, which has, some a location, description, name, etc. And then we have users, and we create a join table to allow a user to attend the meetup, and then meetup comments, which allow people to comment on a meetup. And so you might want to say like, okay, well, I don't want to let somebody who isn't the creator of a resource be able to delete it. So it's really easy to do that in Hasura. Basically, what you can do is just click here on like the delete API, and then you can say there's a custom check. And we can say that a user can only delete this resource if the user's ID is equal to the Hasura user ID, which is a session variable from the login. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. And these are just Boolean composition operators. So these are really flexible and you can model basically anything with them. Okay, now on to actual app. Okay, so here I am test user, and you see that if I try to delete Gavin's or Gavin Ray's comments, I can't do that. Here, add a comment, new comment. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so basically, this is just real-time subscriptions, implementation of the permissions model. As test user, I can't delete, this person's comment, and as this person, I can't delete test user's comment, but I can over here, and all of this is real-time and reactive. And what's really cool about this is that when you look at the business logic for this implementation, all we're doing is calling this auto-generated GraphQL code gen subscription, and then just passing that into our template. And like that's fully reactive, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much that on that. As far as like deployment platforms go, Hasura is a Docker container. So you have a couple of options. One of which is really cool, particularly for serverless, is Serverless Containers. So if you're familiar with like Google Cloud Run or like AWS Fargate, it's similar to Lambda or serverless functions, but instead of deploying only individual functions, you're able to deploy entire Docker containers, which is cool because it avoids a lot of the headaches that you get with like integration testing, attempting to like maintain and deploy a bunch of individual Lambdas, and it's a lot easier to like rapidly develop and iterate on. Yeah. I guess, yes. Usually when I speak at meetups, it's in person and there's like dialogue. So I feel like, yeah, I don't know. Are there any questions? Can we take questions or anything that like seems too abstract? Okay. Well, yeah, that is essentially my presentation. In closing remarks, there's a couple things that I wanted to say, which is that we have a ton of GraphQL tutorials for Vue. If you look at Hasura Learn, we also have a Discord channel for anybody interested in GraphQL in general, not even related to Hasura. And we have a conference coming up. Which is basically this information here. But yeah, that's my presentation. I hope you liked the knockoff real-time meetup fun.
Yeah, nice. There are some questions in the comments.
Okay.
So
yeah, let's do those.
Can a subscription kept open to Fargate or Cloud Run? From Christian. Christian is asking. The last one.
Can subscriptions? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So subscriptions can be kept open through Fargate. I believe Cloud Run actually has an issue where it doesn't support WebSocket traffic at the moment. They do support WebSocket in subscriptions and self-hosted Cloud Run, which is their like GKE for Anthos product. But that's like an on-premise Kubernetes solution. But I do believe it works in Fargate. And yeah, if any of you guys aren't familiar with serverless containers and haven't checked them out, like super recommend. There's nothing easier than just like throwing your code in a Docker container and just like shipping it off to a platform. It'll auto scale, generally scale to zero. There's no DevOps. They generally provision URLs and like HTTPS certifications, so there's like no infra headaches. Also, if you guys aren't familiar, something really cool that Google did just recently was that they actually released in their Cloud Code extension for both VS Code and for IntelliJ, they added the ability to deploy any Docker service, whether that be like your own image or somebody else's, to Cloud Run. So it's really cool, and you can like tail logs, right? So the workflow is basically without leaving your IDE. This probably isn't going to return anything because I haven't used it in forever. But without leaving your IDE, you can literally just do like a Cloud Run deploy. And it'll throw your application up on a serverless Docker container that will auto scale on demand. And the other thing about Cloud Run that's really cool is that you can, this is a really good article. Cloud Run is cheap, and up until about like 50,000 monthly active users per service, it's basically free. So when you're talking about like you don't have to manually manage anything, you can deploy it from your IDE with a click of a button. It auto scales, and you don't have to pay for it. That's a pretty sweet deal. Unfortunately, yeah, WebSocket traffic doesn't work in the like on-premise Cloud Run, but super cool product.
Awesome. Are there any other questions from the chat? Do you have guys any? We still have some time, so.
Okay. All right. I guess if we have time, let me talk about two things. One, how much I love Vue. I've been in the Vue community. This code open source for the repo or for Hasura. Yeah, I'm going to open source this project, and Hasura is entirely open source and free, which kind of like rolls into my next thing. I'm actually like a fairly new hire at Hasura, and the reason why I felt compelled to like reach out to them is because when you are able to build something point and click that would take you like so many hours, like so many manual routes, and so many manual controllers and data access methods, you can just build it point and click. And you don't sacrifice like flexibility or performance. Hasura has like intelligent caching. It uses prepared statements. You can look up our benchmarks. We blow pretty much every other web framework out of the water. We also have an article on scaling to 1 million live connections. We have a database migrations framework baked in to our CLI. But yeah, I mean, like more than anything, the reason why I wanted to give this presentation and the reason why I joined Hasura wasn't because like it paid well or because it was like a job I could find. I had a good job, and dude, Hasura is just incredible, and it's just the experience of the first time you use this and seeing how quickly you can build a product and how quickly you can iterate. It just blows your mind, and you're like, everybody needs to know about this. I mean, all of our code is open source and free too. So it's not like we're trying to take you for your money. Yeah. The code you're representing. Yeah. I will link the repo in the chat after I'm done presenting. You guys can have it. But yeah, okay, that's pretty much all I have. Besides pro features, right? Yeah, but the pro features are nice to have for clients who can afford to have them. Um, all of the functionality, right? Like Hasura is not the kind of company that's like, we're going to do like the freemium model and like withhold features where you feel like, oh, I've got like 80% of the functionality, but to do the stuff I really want, I need to pay. Um, Everybody in the team is pretty staunchly against that. What Pro gives you is a bunch of nice to haves, like rate limiting and an API gateway and team permissions and regressions testing. But all of the core functionalities of the app, it's open source and free, and it always will be. And you would think, right? So this is what I thought. I assumed that like a solid portion of the work was being done, maybe like 50-50 split between our pro product and our open source product. But the grand majority of our work actually goes into our open source product. So yeah, I mean, like, definitely check us out. Please hit us up, in our Discord. We basically we just want to help people build stuff. Our motto, we have company stickers that say "Build shit fast." So if you want to build a product and you want to do it point and click in no code and have a super performant GraphQL API that can integrate with external systems through like language agnostic webhooks, yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay.